Welcome to Life Imitating Movies, the weekly podcast where we cover stories from the past week from across the web, and then we talk about the movies that we think resemble them. So I'm your host, Mitch, and with us is our other host, Brad.
How's it going?
I'm kind of hosting this week's episode. So let's start things off. The question I posed this week was if you could live in any fictional movie universe, what would it be? Because this is a question that like people have, on the playground all the time or in offices, and there are like some common answers, but everyone has, their clear-cut answers. So I want to hear yours first. Let's hear what you said.
So, I had questions about what we meant by movie universe because do we mean uh, uh, can a movie and its sequel be a movie universe? Does it have to be three movies? Does it have to be all interconnected movies like an MCU? Like, what was your definition of a movie universe?
All of the above,
Okay.
whatever you wanna kind of say, like, just take your pick.
All right. So first, when I did a search for movie universes online, I did the BuzzFeed quiz because I have a BuzzFeed quiz for that, and my result was the Star Wars universe because it said that my commitment to justice can often lead to rather grandiose conclusions. I've never done a BuzzFeed quiz before, at least I haven't in like the last 10 years of my life. But so I actually went back to, I originally thought Back to the Future, but then I was like, all right, then we're going to ask, can I be the one who uses the DeLorean? Can I, or am I just a person in the back? I didn't know. So I went with the original. I went with the original movie universe, which is the View Askew universe. Do you know what the View Askew universe is? It's Kevin Smith's movie universe that started with Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Dogma, Clerks 2, Jay and Silent Bob reboot. And Kevin Smith's one of my idols, and it's not an MCU. You don't know, no superheroes, but you know, in this universe, you're getting good dialogue. If you go with Dogma, you know for 100% certainty the existence of God.
Okay.
Something I don't have 100% existence in my I believe right now. So that for me was like it was just like all right, if I'm gonna go, you can go MCU, you can go DC, but I was just like I'm gonna go with the original. 15 years before MCU was doing interconnected movies, Kevin Smith started that with Clerks and his View Askew universe.
Fair enough. Interesting answer. So, switching over to mine, that was my second place, and it was close. That was my second place was Star Wars. And, when I posed this question, I imagined you wouldn't just be like a regular person that does nothing in whatever universe you choose. You would get to be like a figurehead, to really emphasize the universe you're living in. So, you know, Star Wars was second for me. I would absolutely want to be a Jedi, but unfortunately, I'd probably be a Sith because I'm a very emotional person, and like I let my emotions kind of run me. So that's not really the Jedi way, but that's fine with me because you get to do like the lightning hands. So but
Yeah.
that's besides the point. So the one that I picked on a technicality because it's had like a couple feature length theatrical release movies is the Pokemon universe because
Yeah.
at what point does a kid not want to live in that world and be a Pokemon trainer? I mean, it's like, can you think of like a better answer? Because it's like it's also one where you start thinking about all these different universes you could live in, and some are pretty dangerous. It'd be fun to live in them, but they're pretty dangerous, including Star Wars. So I'm like, Pokemon it's pretty low stakes. It's not that risky. You get to train, your pals, and I'm like, that's the one that I would want to live in. That seems like a pretty good choice.
Yeah, that's where our age difference comes in. Where I never played I just don't know much about Pokemon other than Detective Pikachu, which I thought was a good movie.
So last week when we were recording, because we usually record these episodes on Friday, a story actually broke right after the fact that Christopher Plummer had passed away, and he's been around for so long and just such a talented actor, and obviously Something at the beginning of his career that he's very famous for is starring in The Sound of Music, which we've already talked about on a previous episode, a few episodes back. But he's had such a long and storied career, and it was a real shame to hear about that. But and I got to see his second to last movie that he was in theaters back in 2019, back when we could still go to theaters, which was Knives Out. And it's a shame that he won't be in the second one somehow, because they could have written him back in with a flashback or something. But so it's a shame we won't get to see him in that. And like I said, 2019, right up until his death, he was still starring in movies, which is really amazing. So it's a shame to really hear about his passing. What did you kind of think when you heard that news?
I mean, it's just the first part of this year, man. I mean, we've lost a ton of good people. Even, I mean, in the same week, we lost freaking Screech, Screech from Saved by the Bell. I don't know if that's the generational thing. Maybe you weren't around. Maybe Saved by the Bell wasn't as big for you as it was for me. But with Chris Plummer, man, I mean, he was what, in his 80s, late 80s, I think, or mid 80s, something like that. So, he lived a good life. It wasn't, his death isn't one that you're like shocked to hear, but every death is shocking. But I mean, I was a fan, especially his later work, man. He just won his Oscar not long ago for that movie Beginners with Ewan McGregor, man. So he's one of those actors, man. His like you said, his first big movie was Sound of Music, which he had heavily criticized. He said he had trouble shooting that movie, which was interesting. And then he was working right up until pretty much his death. I mean, nobody was really working last year with COVID, but he was still making great movies.
Yeah, and that kind of gets me into my movie pick, where I actually picked something fairly recent for him, not the last few years, but this was the first movie that I kind of saw when I was a teenager, where I didn't really know who he was before this, and I saw this movie, and it kind of led me to investigate more about him and to see more of his movies, and that is Inside Man. And if you haven't really heard of it, it hasn't been in the spotlight for a little bit. Inside Man is a great bank robbery movie starring Denzel Washington, obviously Christopher Plummer, among other people, but it's just a really smart, well-made, well-written bank robbery movie, and it's actually directed, if I correct, it's by Spike Lee. So, I'll admit I'm not familiar with a lot of his stuff, but I certainly liked this one, and this is one of those movies that I wish I could go back and watch it for the first time again, because of all the things that unravel and the things that are presented and the way the twists and turns and the story goes. So, it's not really a super new movie, but we won't really spoil it too much. But it just, what can you say about that movie as a whole? What did you kind of like or not like about it?
It's been a while since I've seen Inside Man. I remember it being really tense. And I mean, it's a movie that has it's Denzel Washington. Honestly, until you just said it, I didn't really remember Chris Plummer was in it. But now that you're saying it, I'm like, all right, he was. But you got Denzel Washington, Jodie Foster, Clive Owen, and it is one of the better bank robbery tense movies, man.
And also, I always get his name wrong. Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Yeah, which he's also a great actor.
Chiwetel Ejiofor. Yeah, that dude's awesome. I will say, man, if you haven't seen a lot of Spike Lee stuff, go back to the beginning. Do the Right Thing. It is such a good movie. And having just seen Driving Miss Daisy, which that lost the Best Picture to, I will say it got robbed, man. Driving Miss Daisy is a good movie, but Do the Right Thing, check it out. Spike Lee doesn't have not all of his movies are great, but I would say Inside Man is great. Do the Right Thing is great. I thought Black Klansman was great. The guy's a phenomenal filmmaker. So I'd give yourself a crash course in some Spike Lee stuff, man.
Yeah, I've heard that his earlier stuff is his best. Although, of course, you just mentioned Black Klansman, which got a lot of great praise from critics and movie goers alike. So I definitely might have to check out some of his other stuff since I'm not too familiar with it. But Yeah, Inside Man is just it's a really entertaining movie, and I'll still go back and watch it, having known what happens. You know, it's still just entertaining to see everything unfold in the movie. And again, it's got a low key really good cast. You know, it's not an ensemble movie. It doesn't have a million names to it, but it still does have a pretty good amount of names, and it's still a pretty good watch. So, let me hear what you picked for this one.
So I actually just went with his last on screen performance, which visually, the last full measure, which is a true story that came out last year about a man from Vietnam who saved a ton of people in the Vietnam War and was killed himself. And 30 years later, there are people that he saved who are fighting for him to get the Medal of Honor, which the government has kind of purposefully denied this man. And it's a true story. True story about this guy, and Plummer plays his father in the movie, and his father he's dying of cancer, and like his purpose is to live to see his son awarded the Medal of Honor for what he did in Vietnam. And it's one of those movies, man. It's a pretty intense movie, and this is an ensemble cast that is like phenomenal. You got Sebastian Stan, who, if you're not familiar, you know Sebastian Stan. He's Bucky. You know Bucky. Chris Plummer, William Hurt, Ed Harris, Sam Jackson. So, I mean, that's a cast right there. And it's a good war movie. It's got good flashbacks to the Vietnam War and stuff, but it also is really good about present day politics and these people whose lives are, you can tell that they're living kind of in the PTSD still 30 years later, Vietnam, and they see this injustice that this man didn't get the Medal of Honor for saving a ton of people in one of the deadliest battles of Vietnam. It was one of the deadliest parts of Vietnam. So, if you're a fan of war movies and true life tales, because it's all true story, check it out.
Yeah, I had known about this movie when I was kind of looking up, doing some research for Christopher Plummer's roles, and I had heard of this movie and I knew he was in it. And I saw, of course, this was the last movie that he was going to be in. So, I might have to give this a watch at one point. This does sound like one of those good, kind of based on a true story, historical dramas, which it's kind of a niche genre, that subset of movies, but it's one that I like because one of my favorite movies, and I have a lot, but one of my favorite movies is The Imitation Game, which is in that same exact kind of category. So I do like those types of movies. So I might have to check it out at some point, if nothing else. Last movie that Christopher Plummer was in as an actor.
Yeah, whenever somebody passes away, I always like. Generally, I'm the person who like. I get on Amazon right away and order like the last movie they did. It's just like I want to own it, I want to see it. So, but this one I didn't do that. This one I owned before just because I really wanted to see it when it came out.
Yeah.
All right, so to lighten things up, my first story is it's a simple one, man. McDonald's is bringing back their high C lava burst beverage. And, I don't know if as you can tell, I'm a McDonald's fan. Not really a McDonald's fan, I'm a McDonald's breakfast fan. And whenever I'd go to their breakfast, that was my beverage of choice, was the high C lava burst. And then I do remember, because I'm fat, I have a horrible memory, but when it comes to food, I remember these things. I remember I went to get my delicious steak, egg, and cheese bagel one day, and I said, let me get the high C lava burst. And they told me they didn't have it anymore. And I was just depressed for like the next week.
Yeah, I try not to go to McDonald's too much, obviously, but high C was never my drink of choice. I would always, if you're going to McDonald's, you were like treating yourself, and I'd always kind of grab like a soda, so like a Coke or a Sprite or something. But it's kind of been like a staple on that little drink dispenser thing for as long as I can remember, and I didn't even know that they actually kind of took it away back in, I think it was 2017, this story said. So, it's good that they're bringing it back for fans. And, it almost kind of seems like a 90s drink, because maybe just because it's been around since then, I kind of think of it like that, but just kind of looking at their logo and just, the memories associated with it, and it's like, just it just has that kind of feel to it, like it's this '90s beverage that's just been around for years.
It could be, man. I don't know. It might be because I associate McDonald's with like I don't eat McDonald's all the time either, but I associate it with breakfast. And when I went to get breakfast, I didn't want a soda. I wanted like, I guess I could have got a coffee or like some sort of nutritional fruit juice, but no, I went with the high C. But all right. So with my movie for that one, I went with the movie that actually had me stop eating McDonald's, which was let me pull it up. The Founder. The movie, true story, another true story, which was about Ray Kroc, the man who stole McDonald's, because McDonald's was founded by the McDonald brothers. And Ray Kroc came along and essentially completely just stole their idea and started building and cut them out of their own business. And even when I believe it was a court ordered Kroc to give the McDonald brothers or cut them in or something, like to this day, the Kroc brothers or the McDonald brothers still haven't seen even 1% of the profits of McDonald's, which would be enough for, generations of a family to live on. So it actually, when I saw that movie, I was just like, I don't want to support McDonald's anymore. I don't want to support this man or his family. Like, what a piece of garbage. But with a phenomenal performance by Michael Keaton, man. That guy is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to how much you didn't want to support McDonald's after watching this, for how great of a job Michael Keaton did as Ray Kroc. This kind of, not sleazy, because you almost kind of root for him and you still like him, but kind of underhanded businessman he is in the movie. And I just watched this one, I think it was last week or the week before, something to rewatch an old favorite. And I still do like this one, and it's in that same genre that we just talked about, the historical, based on a true story kind of drama. And this is another good one. And the subject material, I think, is interesting to a lot of people, because a lot of people know McDonald's and they don't really know the story of how it was founded. So that may have reeled in some more people, as opposed to another kind of war drama film where people want to go to the movies and see something lighter, or watch something at home and see something lighter. So I think this one probably reeled in some more people because of its premise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny to say. It is lighthearted, even though the movie is about a horrible human being completely screwing over two people. But it is more lighthearted. And it's a movie that I think a lot of people, because I believe it came out, I think it was the year after Birdman, or within the time frame of Birdman, and a lot of people thought Keaton got screwed out of an Oscar nomination for it, because he's just, it's just Keaton, man. I love Keaton. Keaton's such a great actor.
Yeah, and he, like I said, he does such a great job in this. I wouldn't say he carries the movie, because the movie stands fine on its own. It's still good. Like, if you took him out, it's still a good movie, but it's obviously centered around him. He's the main character, and he just kind of holds it down so well, where he just does such a great job in the role, and he's just a great actor, and it's because he's such a great actor that you still like him, despite some of the business tactics that he puts into play in the movie. And it's a really good one. It's a good watch for sure.
Yeah, man. So would you pick as your McDonald's high C adjacent movie?
So, this one, I wouldn't say it's an ABC, but you know how the flavor is called High C Orange Lava Burst, I think. So I took that lava burst and I ran with it. So I picked the movie Volcano, which, if you've never heard of it, is a '90s disaster film starring Tommy Lee Jones, amongst others. And basically, it's about a volcano pretty much emerging in your favorite city, LA, and dealing with the consequences of that, and trying to mitigate the damage, and just chaos going on. And I saw this one in college. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, great, Dodgers. Um, so I saw this one in college with some friends, and it was a good movie to just kind of sit around with some friends and watch on like a Sunday or Saturday afternoon. And it was just, it's entertaining. It's a disaster movie. You know, you're not expecting Oscar worthy performances or, you know, really nuanced storytelling. It's just, it's a good disaster movie. It's entertaining. And the visual effects are still pretty good. You know, it's not like they really had to do too much other than kind of show a bunch of lava kind of creeping across the landscape and kind of doing damage to the environment. So I liked it. It was a good entertaining movie, and if it was located somewhere on a streaming service, because it's kind of one of those random ones that you don't really see a lot on like Netflix or stuff like that. It's kind of a smaller, less well known movie from a little while ago that you don't really see pop up on streaming services these days. But if it was on one, I would probably watch it again for entertainment value and to kind of reminisce, and enjoy it.
Yeah, so this is one of those interesting things, which is so before we do these stories for anybody listening, we give each other the news story, and then we don't tell each other what movie we're going to pick. And so I picked The Founder, and you said you just watched The Founder not long ago, like a week or two ago. I just watched Volcano last week because there was a free preview of Stars not long ago, and I had my Volcano was on Stars, and I was like, I haven't seen that in such a long time, so I hit record, and that's you're exactly right, man. It's a Saturday afternoon movie where you just watch it. It's not it's just a dumb disaster movie. And if you remember, that falls in the same breath as like a Deep Impact, Armageddon, or those movies where two movies come out the same year. Because the same year Volcano was released, Dante's Peak was released. If you know that movie, so that was another interesting factoid of Volcano. But yeah, I mean, it's Tommy Lee Jones. I love Tommy Lee Jones, and it's fun to see Tommy Lee Jones is generally an actor who's like super serious, man. So it was nice to see. It's nice to see Tommy Lee Jones kind of in like a cheesy disaster movie, where a volcano erupts right outside the Beverly Center in L.A. and completely implausible. Could never happen. The science in the movie, I'm sure, is completely dumb. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know, but yeah, it is exactly what you said. A Saturday afternoon movie.
So, not really a story, but an event coming up this week. We're filming this episode on Friday, but by the time this episode airs on Monday, Valentine's Day will have already passed. So, it's on a Sunday this year. And I'm sure for a lot of people, it's going to be a different Valentine's Day than in years past because of everything going on. People that have traditions, whether they're single together with somebody or they hang out with family. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different this year, but hopefully people still find a little bit of a way to do something to show appreciation to the people in their life. And you don't have to do that on Valentine's Day. You could do that on a Wednesday in April, but still a day where people kind of take stock and appreciate what they have, instead of what they don't have.
Yeah, Valentine's Day. I'll be honest, not a lot of Valentine's Day mattered to this guy. If I remember correctly, the last Valentine's date I had was when I was living in the aforementioned LA, and I took a girl to see a taping of the Craig Ferguson show. So that should tell you how long ago it was. Craig Ferguson hasn't been on the air for a number of years. But I was apart from that. Yeah, I've never. I send. I have a friend in LA who I sent some stuff to for Valentine's Day this year. We're just really good close friends. So I sent her some stuff this year for Valentine's Day, but yeah, it's a holiday.
Fair enough. It's not really significant for some people, but at least it's something where, like I said, hopefully with everything going on, it lets you appreciate what you still do have and the people around you, and things to be thankful for, almost like a mini Thanksgiving instead of everything going on and the things that we aren't able to do right now. So switching gears, to talk like a little bit of a happier note here. obviously for Valentine's Day, you got to pick, a romantic comedy or something along that line. So I didn't pick the movie Valentine's Day. It's okay. It's the obvious pick, but instead, what I went with was a movie that I can't believe I haven't talked about yet on this show because it's one of my favorites in recent years. But it's a movie called Love, Simon, and this
Yeah.
is a romantic comedy that is just it's very much needed in terms of representation, and it's just besides that, it's still just so well done, and at least that's what I think. And it's just, the story, it's almost like a little bit of a mystery because if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of one of these coming of age stories where the main character Simon, meets somebody online at his high school and kind of has to figure out who they are because he starts to develop feelings for him. So it almost kind of has this mystery aspect to it, which keeps it going, the story moving along, and it kind of leaves you wondering who's the person he's been writing to in his emails. But it's still just, it's funny. The young cast, you'd recognize all their faces from different places, but, they're not household names yet. Some of them might be, some of them kind of are already, but the young cast at its core is so great and they have such a great chemistry together. You really buy into them being best friends and hanging out at high school, and there's still plenty of humor that's really funny and sharp and witty, not other kind of types of humor like kind of low hanging fruit, stuff like that. It's really kind of smart comedy. And then like I said, it's just much needed representation these days with a romantic comedy with this kind of source material instead of the thousands of straight couple, like we see 10 of them a year that you didn't even know existed that just get churned out day after day.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, I saw Love, Simon, and that was one of the few movies I think I just saw. I had rented or something, and after it was over, I went on Amazon and bought it right away because it was it's I'll say regardless of what it represents and the representation it has, it's just a good movie. It's just a good romantic comedy. The parents in it. You got, what was it, Timothy Oliphant and Jennifer Garner.
Uh,
I'm predisposed.
no, it was who's the guy? Oh, Josh Duhamel. Josh Duhamel.
They're interchangeable. Come on,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I actually I like them both, man. I like both those guys. But Jennifer Garner I watch anything Garner's and I'm a big fan of hers. But it was a good movie, and I like that it was there's a romantic comedy, but it was also a mystery. It was a mystery movie because the entire movie you're like, all right, who is it? Who's the one? Who's the one? Who's the one? Who is it? And you get to the end and you find out who it is, and it's a nice moment. It's just a good movie. I like a nice romantic comedy. I can admit that, and that one was in recent years. We've had an onslaught of like really good kind of independent. I don't know if Love, Simon was independent, but it was a low key movie, not a big wide super like big deal made out of it release. So there's been some really good low key ones like that, like Perks of Being a Wallflower, stuff like that. So yeah, it was just a good movie. And they made a TV show, I think. Now I haven't seen it, but I think they made a TV show about it.
Yeah, Love Victor, which is I think on
Yeah.
Hulu still, and I think they're working on a second season of that. So, I would recommend checking out the movie first because the show kind of follows the events of that afterwards, and story-wise, if that's important to you, but also just to get a grasp on the world and the kind of tone and feel. I would definitely recommend if you wanted to check out either or both the movie first. But yeah, Love Victor is kind of it's another kind of shared universe thing. So it's a
I
pretty
didn't know.
solid show too.
Right on. Yeah, I haven't seen. I didn't know that it was like in the same world. I thought it was just same story, different people, TV form. That's kind of cool. My movie is one that you kind of already talked about and kind of crapped all over. I just went obvious, man. I went Valentine's Day. I enjoy it. I like those ensemble. movies like that, like Mother's Day, like he's just not that into you. Uh, the story with that is I don't even think this is actually true, but my friend says that on Valentine's Day when this movie first came out, me and a buddy of mine watched it in the dark by ourselves together. He swears by that story. I know that me and my buddy did watch it together because we were both like, oh, man, let's watch this movie. It was all right. But I don't believe it was on Valentine's Day, and it certainly wasn't in the dark. But he loves telling our friends that story. So that's been a perennial story in my life with him. But, that was a Gary Marshall flick, man. Gary Marshall's an icon of television. He made the original, he made Pretty Woman and all that. So kind of the original uh, romantic comedy. Um, yeah, I will not lie. Last year on Valentine's Day, I did watch Valentine's Day because I am pretty literal like that. On Independence Day, I'll watch Independence Day. But, it's another, it's not a heavy movie, man. It's another Saturday afternoon movie, if you will, where it's just throw it on. Nobody's dying. It's just a good lighthearted romantic comedy with, I think, Jennifer Garner is in that one too. So another Jennifer Garner.
Yeah, I think you have that right with it's, a low key Saturday afternoon movie that you can just enjoy. And, I don't mind Valentine's Day as a movie. It's okay. It's not my favorite out of these different ones where it's the same thing but on different holidays, because you have He's Just Not That Into You. You have Valentine's Day. I think there's one called New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. And, they're all okay. They're all decent watches, and I like out of this kind of bunch of these types of movies that were made, I like the He's Just Not that Into You the best out of the bunch. But it's good. It's a good romantic comedy. It's got an ensemble cast, and there are all these kind of intertwined stories going on. So it keeps you entertained. It keeps you bouncing around to these different people's lives, and they're all solid rom coms. Not the best ever, not the worst. So yeah, it's enjoyable.
All right, so my next story, no, they're just lighthearted. I just wanted to go all lighthearted this week, which is during COVID, man. One of my heroes, Jack Black. I absolutely love Jack Black. Even if I wasn't a fat guy, he's a fat hero, but he's also just a great actor. I just love Jack Black, and so he's been doing these little videos from his backyard, which are just hilarious. It's just him in a speedo doing just crazy, funny, dumb stuff. And so this last week, he made a video where he's Thor, and you know, I guess during COVID, during times where people might be like, all right, this sucks. It's just a funny, lighthearted video from I think one of the best comedic actors out there.
Yeah, Jack Black is just a funny guy, whether it's in movies or, I think he's like a TikTok, big TikTok person nowadays too. But he's just a funny guy, whether he's on or off camera, because like this video, he's just like a goofy guy in real life, just like hanging around him just seems like, you'd have a fun day. So, the video is pretty funny. He's dressed up as like discount Thor, and he put like some visual effects in the little video too, like with the lightning, and he's kind of flying off. So yeah, he seems like a really funny guy in real life too.
And he's a good guy too. I when I lived in LA, I guess I may mention that a lot. I guess I'm a giant tool. But anyway, I'm friends with some people out there, and then one of the guys worked at the ArcLight out there, which is a famous movie theater in the middle of Hollywood. And he told me a story of Jack Black came in there, and he was with his kid, and they were seeing a movie, and his kid threw the bucket of popcorn all over the ground. And Jack Black went out there and said, "Hey, my kid threw the bucket of popcorn all over the place." And the guy was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it." He's like, "No, just give me a little trash bag or whatever, and I'll go take care of it myself." Simple story, tells you all you need to know about Jack Black. Phenomenal dude. So with that, I was going through the Rolodex or the library of Jack Black movies. There's a million I could pick. I was going to go with the movie Airborne from '94, which is like one of his first movies, but I instead went with Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny because I am a huge Tenacious D fan. I love that band. And one of the things that sucks about COVID, I had tickets to see them in October. They're like on my bucket list of bands to see live. I haven't seen them yet. I had tickets for October of 2020 to see them, and of course that concert got canceled. And I had good seats too, man. Oh, so. But this movie was a movie that came out. It was like the first Tenacious D movie. The soundtrack for it is hilarious. The movie I find to be hilarious. It was a huge bomb in theaters, which kind of sucked because it meant no more. I'd have loved to see another Tenacious D movie. But they did just release like an animated thing on YouTube not long ago, which I have. I bought the book and everything for that. But yeah, Tenacious D, man. You see it? You a fan of Tenacious D?
I've seen bits and pieces of it. I will say I don't mind it. I don't mind the music, like their music and the movie. I'm just not as big of a fan as other people. And I feel like these people are just they're just kind of sprinkled in all over. Where you just sometimes just run into a fan of Tenacious D, like they're everywhere. It just seems like a lot of people really like either this movie or their music or both, and it just like I had a friend of mine in high school who was a big Tenacious D fan back then, and he might still be today. We're still friends today, and he might still be a Tenacious D fan today. But it's just wherever you're at in life, it just seems like they are able to hook a lot of people at different stages in their life, and it really just speaks to a lot of people, like the music and the movie, or again both. It seems like something that kind of really reaches a lot of people, which is great, and it just like I said, I don't mind it. It's not one of my favorites, but it's good.
Yeah, I mean, they're just a funny band, man. They have skits on their CDs that I absolutely love, and their music, it's just good, funny music, and it's Jack Black and Kyle Gass, and Kyle Gass, one of those actors where you maybe the name doesn't spur his face in your head, but you see him, you're like, oh, I know that guy. So just a great band, great movie, lots of good cameos, man. Tim Robbins is in it. Dave Grohl plays Satan in the end of the movie, so it's just a good movie, man.
Yeah, I knew you would go a Jack Black movie, so I kind of picked the other side of it, which is, come on, a Thor movie. Like, with the video, like you
Yeah.
got Jack Black and Thor, like the two things about this video and this story. So I picked Thor Ragnarok as my movie, and I picked it because I actually want to talk about it a little bit and kind of lend support to people out there who don't like it. And I'm one of those people where I saw this in theaters, and I wouldn't say it was the high expectations that ruined it for me. I just think it was too comedic, and it's weird to kind of criticize a movie in that way. But Thor, who was such like a big, strong, like kind of badass character, and was like one of the strongest members of the Avengers, and you just want to see him take down like some giant foe, and really kind of lean into that like Norse god mythology stuff. He just becomes like a comedian in this one, just cracking jokes, and it's not just him. They kind of undermine every serious moment in the movie, and we don't really get that many serious moments in the MCU. And they undermine every serious moment with like a joke or just kind of brush by it, like spoilers. But again, this was a super popular movie. It's been out a few years, so. But spoilers when Odin dies, and they immediately just gloss over that, and Hela just shows up like 3 seconds afterwards, and then towards the end of the movie when Asgard is destroyed, like blown up, these people's home where we really liked going there and seeing Asgard in the movies, and they blow it up, and then 5 seconds later they undercut it with a joke. It's just like it just didn't do it for me on the whole. And it's just, unfortunately, it was another thing fans were campaigning for and still are, is a Planet Hulk movie or World War Hulk movie, which is, to sum it up quickly, it's a story where he gets marooned on this planet and becomes a champion gladiator. And we sort of got this in this movie, but it was like a halfway compromise where they almost kind of said, look, we know you fans want to see this, but this is all you're going to get. So it just kind of like fell flat for me. It didn't really entertain me, and just kind of like, it just felt like a mishmash of things that didn't work well together.
Right on. So, are you? We've talked. Are you a comic book reader? I mean, you just mentioned Planet Hulk and all that, so you know the mythology of like the Marvel movies and Marvel stories, right?
Yeah, I mean, even if I haven't gone back and read some of these stories myself firsthand, I know of them, and I know, some of these big stories that have gone on before. So, I can't say I've read all these different ones that the movies are based on, but I know of them and I know kind of what happens in them. And, again, this was just not really that.
Yeah, so you know, like the broad strokes of the story. Like I'm not familiar with Planet. I've heard of Planet Hulk, but only probably because of the movie. But I'm not familiar with what Planet Hulk is or anything. So saying that, Thor Ragnarok was my favorite of the three, because I enjoyed the comedy of it. I thought it was funny, and if you go back and watch the first Thor is funny. I mean, he is a fun. Thor is a funny character. He does bust jokes in the first movie. The second movie for me is Thor: The Dark World or whatever it is the worst Marvel movie. I and because it was so serious, it took some of the fun out of the movies for me, and it just didn't gel for me. So did you?
I think the problem, at least for me, with the Dark World, which was the second Thor movie, I think the problem was it was just really underdeveloped. It just didn't really have much soul to it. I don't think it was bad because it was too serious, because you still had jokes in it too. And look, I'm not saying that you can't have jokes in a Marvel movie. That's one of the foundations of them. And look, I like a slightly more serious Marvel movie with some stakes to it, but and that's what I guess Infinity War was. But that's besides the point. So, you can still have a movie with some jokes in it, but you can still make a good movie with that in it. And to me, Ragnarok it just didn't really fit what was going on with the characters, and what was going on at the time in terms of the timeline of the movies. And it just, it's like you can make a funny movie with like they have a million kind of funny characters in the MCU that you can make a funny, entertaining movie, like Star Lord or Spider Man or Ant Man, or all these other different ones. And it's like, I just wanted to see like a movie that was true to Thor, and I just didn't really think that was it, because not only with the jokes, but this really kind of stripped him a lot of his signature stuff. Like they got rid of his hair, and they got rid of his hammer, and they got rid of his dad, and they got rid of his homeworld, and they got rid of one of his eyes, and they got rid of his, personality that he started with. So they really kind of like stripped him of everything that, made him Thor. So I'm like, this isn't really the same person. This is a different person doing an imitation of Thor.
I mean, yeah, like I said, I enjoyed it because I enjoyed it. I love Taika Waititi. I think that guy's a phenomenal filmmaker. Obviously, went on to win the Oscar for Jojo Rabbit. I like his character in the movie that he plays, Korg, I think is his name, and that character cracks me up because of how Taika Waititi portrays him, where he really lays on that New Zealand accent real thick, and it just cracks me up. So with that in mind, do you think you're going to enjoy what's in Love and Thunder, the upcoming one, which is be Taika Waititi again?
Maybe. There might be some things I like in it, but hopefully they listen to some of the feedback from Thor Ragnarok from people that weren't as enthused about it, because the more I see online when it's mentioned and the more time that goes on, it seems like more people are not on my side. Like, my side isn't the dominant side where people didn't like it, but there's more showing up where people kind of voice their concerns about the movie and say, oh, when you think about it, I didn't really like this, or this just didn't really hold up to me. So maybe they kind of listen to some of that feedback and tweak the formula a little bit.
Right on. We shall see.
So obviously a big event from this past week was the Super Bowl. How could you miss it, even if you're not a sports fan? So I am a sports fan, and I know you are too. And unfortunately, neither of us are Tom Brady fans. Guy wins another championship. Whoop-de-doo. So, let's just kind of glaze over that. So, let's just talk about the game. Did you watch the game? What did you think of the commercials? What do you think about the halftime show? Because these are things that people are talking about, in terms of the Super Bowl, because these are things that people discuss every year, and obviously it's a little bit different this year, like everything else.
So I'll preface this with anybody who's watching this on YouTube may notice that a lot of the times when we talk, Mitch rolls his eyes at things I say all the time. Mitch, you're going to roll your eyes at almost everything I say about the Super Bowl story here. One, I did watch it. I am a Chiefs fan. I am from San Francisco area, Fremont, just south of San Francisco. And so I grew up a 49er fan. And then when Joe Montana went to the Chiefs in 94, I started following the Chiefs. So from 94 on, I've been a Chiefs fan, second favorite team. So obviously I was rooting for the Chiefs pretty hardcore. And to see the thumping they took, man, that sucked, because I maybe could have handled it if it was like they lost the game on a field goal. But man, they lost that game, man. It was a drubbing. But I will say, man, the officiating in that game, just to begin, was horrible. Okay, so you agree with me then, because it was just and it shifted the momentum of the game with those calls, man. It turned over an interception that probably could have been a touchdown. It turned over so many.
Look, I just want to say really quick, I'm not one of those people that, that always says, oh, that was the best I've ever seen or the worst I've ever seen. I don't just throw that out there for anything, not just sports, but this was some of the worst officiating I could remember in a Super Bowl to, begin the game. And it just, really quick, the Chiefs had some questionable penalties called against them. And, I went online and saw what people were saying live about the game. And I was far from the only one. So it wasn't just me, not being a Tom Brady fan, kind of seeing what I wanted to see. And, honestly, I stopped watching in the third quarter once I saw it was going to be a blowout, because I thought, I don't want to see Tom Brady win again. This is a blowout. This is a boring game. So I stopped watching in the third quarter, but at the point that I stopped watching, Tampa Bay only had one penalty for 5 yards the entire game up until that point. I don't care how good you are as a team, even if you make it to the Super Bowl, if you're the best team in the league, you screw up more than just one time by the third quarter. But by the time the game is almost done. So the fact that they only had one penalty for 5 yards and the Chiefs had all these questionable calls against them, it makes you want to ask some questions about what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, home field advantage, home officiating advantage, really. I don't like Tom Brady. He might be a great person. Who knows? He might be. Before the game, Tom Brady was talking about, they asked him what his favorite team was growing up. He said 49ers. They asked him who his favorite players are. He said Joe Montana and just Steve Young. So that should endear me to the guy. But I hate people calling him the GOAT. I'm so sick of every freaking ESPN and NFL person saying, the GOAT, the GOAT. No, Joe Montana, in my book, is the GOAT, obviously, because I'm a fan of Niners and Chiefs and followed him to the Chiefs. But he also played in a league where he got hit. Quarterbacks were pressured. Where you would get you wouldn't get a flag if you hit the quarterback. Now defenders are scared to hit a quarterback. That's why Tom Brady can play till he's 50. So it's just, God, I hated that game, man.
So
but to answer your, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so let's move on. We could both rant about the game for a while, but
Yeah.
Just in general, what did you think of the commercials this year?
There were a couple of decent ones. The Michael B. Jordan one was good. I enjoyed the Edward Scissorhands. Timothy Chalamet and Winona Ryder were in it. The Matthew McConaughey Doritos 3D one I thought was pretty clever. Made me go out and buy some Doritos 3D, mainly because I remember them from when I was young, which now I realize they're just bugles. But yeah, nothing stood out to me in terms of commercials.
Yeah, I was right there with you with that. I thought they were just okay this year, and maybe it was just me, but a lot of them seem to rely more heavily upon the celebrity cameos instead of just making a good, funny commercial. And I understand that this year they were probably going to be not as great because of everything going on. A week or two ago on a previous episode, we talked about how Budweiser wasn't going to advertise on the Super Bowl for the first time since 1983. and they still advertised some of their other products, but it was because they thought it would be hard to find the right tone for their commercial. Too serious, too funny with everything going on. And, obviously a lot of companies are losing money, and this is a good way to save a little bit of money is not advertising in the Super Bowl. So they were okay. And unfortunately, a part of the commercials I look forward to the most is seeing these eye-catching previews for upcoming movies for the year. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there weren't really any of those. There were a couple, but it's because we don't know when any of these movies are going to come out, and there's no sense really advertising them because, again, it costs so much money, and we don't even know what the theater movie landscape is going to look like later this year. So, we couldn't even get previews of cool movies coming up, or just, it was okay. And, to kind of wrap it up, that's what I thought about the halftime show too. It was okay. It wasn't the best I've seen, but it wasn't terrible. I just felt like, they almost went a little bit too big. They were trying to really fancy it up, and it just came across as like, yeah, this is okay. And it seems like a lot of people felt the same way, that it was decent. It was okay.
Yeah. So the halftime show, actually, I didn't watch. I liked The Weeknd, loved the song "Blinding Lights," but at that point, my buddies and we did like a Zoom call between like six of us, so I didn't watch that. I didn't. I saw part of it. I want to go back to YouTube and watch the actual show because I do like The Weeknd. It's normally I don't give two craps about the halftime show. Couldn't care less. Don't really like the artist, but I do enjoy The Weeknd, so I do want to go back and watch it. But to your point about movie previews, did you see the preview for Old?
Yeah, and we've talked about this offline in the past, where I'm just wary of M. Night Shyamalan these days. I mean, his past works, he's had so many chances to make great movies, and he's had all the goodwill in the world given to him. And he's just kind of like messed it up time after time and just made some really awful movies. So I know he's had a little bit of a comeback with Split, but then like Glass wasn't as great it was supposed to be critically and commercially, and it just I'm really I'm really wary to watch anything that he does these days.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it just because I want to see what the mystery is. But yeah, I'm with you in terms. I have tempered expectations, but I will see an M Night Shyamalan movie when it comes out.
So let's get into the movie picks here. We've talked about the Super Bowl for long enough. So, um,
Oh wow,
for
I didn't even realize we hadn't gotten to those yet. Yeah, go ahead.
for this one, because there's only so many football movies out there, and I don't want to exhaust our supply to talk about them, because there will be football stories in the future. Instead, what I did was Tom Brady, been in the league forever. His first year in the league was the year 2000, if you can believe it. And, it seems like a better time if you're an anti Tom Brady person, because his stats from 2000, he threw one pass for 6 yards for the entire season. So what a great time that must have been. But a movie from 2000, I picked one, and I really like this one. It's called Meet the Parents, and this is a really great comedy. It's just like a classic. It's Ben Stiller versus Robert De Niro. It's exactly there in a title. He's meeting the parents of his girlfriend, who he plans to marry, and it's just hilarity and chaos ensues. And it's such a great comedy that I still love watching to this day. And there's some classic lines to it, and it's just it's such like, and it's my type of humor too. It's kind of like a dry, witty humor with the dialogue, but then there's plenty of things that go on where it's like physical problematic things that happen. But a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the humor there is like my type of humor, where it's kind of witty and dry and sarcastic. And it speaks to me, and it's still such a great comedy.
Yeah, that's another one where I actually watched the trilogy not long ago, going back because I hadn't seen them in such a long time. And the first one is the best. It's yeah, it's another one of those lighthearted, good, funny movies, man. Robert De Niro. At that point, I don't know if he had been in a ton of comedies. I think that might have been like the turn of his like comedic. I think maybe he had done Rocky and Bullwinkle before that, but I think the world just would prefer to forget that movie. But it's just a funny movie. Ben Stiller is just a funny funny guy. It's got Owen Wilson in it, and he plays her ex fiance, and he's hilarious in it. Yeah, just a funny movie, man. Just a good, funny movie. I didn't go football either because I had the same thought as you. There's only so many football movies you can do, and we'll probably over the course of this thing discuss them all because who doesn't love a good football movie? So I just went with Tom Brady, and I went with the fact that he's a cheater. He's a stupid cheater. He deflates balls and films other people's practices, and that's why he's also not the GOAT. So with that, I said, what's a movie where somebody cheats in it? And I went with the movie Extract. Because in Extract, Kristen Wiig is the wife of Jason Bateman, and she cheats on him. So that's quite a stretch, but that's where I went. I don't know if you ever seen Extract. It's a Mike Judge movie. Mike Judge is another one of the funniest guys out there. Guy created Beavis and Butthead, did Office Space, Idiocracy, and Extract is just a great movie about a con artist played by Mila Kunis who comes in and tries to get the money from a extract, the flavorings extract, vanilla extract type stuff. Tries to get money from a guy who had an on-site accident and everything. And Jason Bateman, for my money, is one of the best comedic actors. It's got Ben Affleck in the movie, and his role is hilarious. He plays a character named Brad, which I love because there's a line in the movie where he says, or no, he doesn't play Brad. Brad plays the guy who Jason Bateman gets to cheat with his wife so he can hold it over her, something like that. But there's a funny line in the movie that I use all the time, which is nobody crushes more ass than my man Brad. I just, since my name's Brad, it's a funny thing. But I don't know. Have you ever seen it?
This is another one of those. I've seen bits and pieces of it on TV and here and there, so it seems pretty good. I'll admit I'm not a huge Mike Judge fan. I know a lot of his stuff, but I don't dislike him. I just don't really. I'm not as big of a fan as other people. I don't mind his stuff, but I will say I'm not as big of a Mike Judge fan as other people. But Jason Bateman, I really like comedies that he's usually in. He kind of usually plays the straight man. He kind of like is not stone faced all the time, but kind of reacts to things and just, kind of plays that like witty, sarcastic guy, not like the zany, kooky, out of control guy in comedies. But, I think he does a really good job of his role that he plays in ones that he starred in. And one of the recent comedies I think is one of the better comedies that we've gotten in recent years that he was in is Game Night. And, that was an original comedy and it was really good with him in it amongst other people. But, so I do like the people in this movie and I don't really mind Mike Judge. So maybe someday I'll check it out, but it seems like there are worse movies to watch.
Yeah, no, I love Mike Judge for me. Beavis and Butthead is one of the greatest shows ever. I love Beavis and Butthead. But just on the Bateman side, man, I've been watching Ozark. So if you want to see a great actor, man, watch. He's not funny in Ozark. It is a great show, and he's a phenomenal in it. Bateman, great actor. All right, so my last story, the last story of this week's episode is just a story I found online about how Jamaica is in a kind of a marijuana drought, marijuana shortage, and one, it's just it's a funny story in that you would never expect Jamaica to burn out of weed, but it's a more serious story in the global warming type aspect because that's what essentially has made the drought happen and flood out the weed or whatever. It's killing their weed. But the real thing I took away from the story was that weed was not legal in Jamaica until 2015. I just assumed weed was always legal in Jamaica.
Yeah, I think like the rest of the world, people are starting to wrap their heads around that we should make this legal and we should incorporate it into like, government and regulate it and, the government will be able to make money off of it and it would just be a win-win for everybody. But that's a different discussion. But in terms of the story, yeah, I'm with you where it wasn't really a funny story because, this is affecting people's livelihoods in the country, but it's just funny to hear that Jamaica is short on weed, where you just think of they're almost synonymous with each other. But, for this, I feel like there was only one place to kind of go with a movie relating to this, and that was a stoner movie. So, I want to hear what you picked. I doubt we picked the same one because there are a lot of them out there, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, I mean, I just went with because it's a movie I watch every year at Christmas time. So I went with a very Harold and Kumar 3D Christmas. Oh, did we not pick it? You
No,
went with
and
Harold and Kumar.
yeah, really, really quick. I'm just gonna say mine. It's a shame that this is probably the closest we've gotten to the same picking the same movie for a story, and because I picked Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, and it's a
That's
shame because
almost
yeah,
good.
it was that close, same franchise, two movies apart. So it's carry on. Like let me hear about Harold and Kumar Christmas.
I almost went with that one, but I went with the 3D Christmas one because I genuinely watch it every year. So I knew I could talk more about this one than I could White Castle because I actually did watch White Castle last year, but I know more about the 3D. But yeah, I picked it because one, like I said, watch it every year. Two, in terms of 3D, this is one of the better 3D movies, man, because it uses the technology really well. Like when they smoke weed, the smoke actually like comes out of the screen at you. They have like they throw eggs in the movie, and the eggs come out of the screen. Like it's one of the better 3D movies that they made, and just a funny. It's a Christmas movie. I like the R-rated Christmas movies, so it's just enjoyable, and I like the franchise as a whole, as I possibly you do with your pick. So why don't you get into your pick, man?
Yeah, like I said, the movie I picked relating to this was Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, which is the first in the three of these movies, and the middle one is Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay. And I guess we should just talk about the franchise since we picked two movies from the same one, and I think these are great comedies. Like I said, these are kind of like stoner films, but it's not like it's 100% about weed the entire time. It's more just these two characters that like to like weed, and they just kind of go on these crazy adventures and find themselves in crazy situations. So I think they're really great, funny comedies. They're wacky and random at some parts, but also it's just the two leads. It's just a great duo, them kind of bouncing off of each other. Cal Penn and John Cho, who are both very underrated actors, by the way. But I think it's a hilarious pairing, and they're just funny. Like I wouldn't even call them lowbrow. I would just say it's just funny comedy. It's just good classic. Like there's some slapstick, there's some crazy situations happening, and it's just they're good comedies. I'll defend them.
Yeah, man. I mean, I like that the first when the first movie came out, they even advertised it funny where they didn't say John Cho Cal Penn. They advertised it as starring the guy from American Pie and the guy from Van Wilder, which was just funny marketing in of itself. Plus, you got and for John Cho, I'll say I don't know if you ever saw the movie Searching. Dude should have been nominated for an Oscar for that movie, but that's besides the point. Another great part of that movie is Neil Patrick Harris. That dude comes in and almost steals the movies in his roles in the apps. And I think that was before he started doing How I Met Your Mother, which because it showed like this, dude grew up as Doogie Howser, and then you see him like this raunchy, version of himself, which is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, the first one came out, I want to say, in the mid to late 2000s. And that was definitely before How I Met Your Mother started. So I think I'm just gonna assume that someone out there saw his performance in the first Harold and Kumar and then cast him for How I Met Your Mother because yeah, his cameos in those three movies are hilarious. He just kind of swoops in and almost steals the show from the other guys and the other actors and actresses in these things, and it's just he just plays like a super funny, like crazy version of himself.
Yeah. Have you seen all three?
I haven't seen the third one, and it's funny because I have it on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever it is because one day I kind of picked up they had the trio of them in a little pack, so I will watch the third one at some point.
It's good, man. Yeah, check it out.
So, in closing here, we usually talk about a new release in quotation marks, movie of the week. And because we say quotation marks, is because, if things were normal, we'd be talking about these movies that everyone's seeing in theaters and what we think of them and, expressing our own opinions. But obviously, there aren't a lot of new releases out there right now. So, if there really isn't a big new release to talk about instead, whoever's kind of hosting each week, we alternate who's hosting, but whoever's kind of hosting each week will talk about a movie that they just saw for the first time this past week. So I'm up this week, and the movie I want to talk about here is Whiplash to kind of close out this episode. And Whiplash was one of those movies that was on my list for a long time. That it wasn't really on a streaming service, and it wasn't one of these ones where I was scrolling a channel and just decided to tune in. It was a movie that I had written down and I said, okay, I want to see this one day. So I finally was able to track it down and give it a watch. And, it was really good. And it doesn't feel short, but it has a short runtime, but it's able to accomplish so much in such a short amount of time. And, for those of you who may not know Whiplash, it came out back in, I think it was 2013, 2014, somewhere around there, and it's directed by Damien Chazelle, who did La La Land. And this is kind of in that same vein where it explores jazz music and really dives deep into it and how it's made and the process through creating it. Although I will say that this one is more heavy on the drama. So Whiplash, I absolutely loved it. What did you think when you kind of first saw it, or if you go back and you watch it sometimes occasionally?
Yeah, so this was a really good one. That behind the scenes of we send each other these stories that we're gonna pick and what movie we're gonna talk about at the end, or a couple of days ago earlier in the week. When I saw Whiplash, I was like, good choice, man, because it was one that. So I get really into awards season, and during awards season, I'll watch the contenders probably several times over the course of the season. So when Whiplash first came out, I probably watched it 4 or 5 times in the course of that award season, but I hadn't seen it since then. So when I saw that on the list, I was like, "Oh man, that's a great choice, man!" Because I'm gonna go back and watch this movie I hadn't watched in a while. And so I actually watched it last night, and it holds up, man. It is so good. And obviously, if you remember last week's episode, La La Land is number 3 on my all-time favorite movies list. I absolutely love Damien Chazelle and Justin Hurwitz, who does the score for his movies. And they met at Harvard. I looked it up on his Wikipedia page. But and obviously, J.K. Simmons went on to win the Oscar for that for Best Supporting Actor. You got Miles Teller, who's one of those actors who's just, he's a good actor, man. He's one of those kind of newer actors that you see, and he's just a good actor. He's going to be in the new Top Gun movie, Maverick, which I'm looking forward to. But it's an intense movie about jazz music. It's just like, those words usually don't go together. But Simmons' performance in that movie, man, it's so good. So good, man. He deserved that Oscar. And he's one of those actors that I think everybody just loved.
Yeah, J.K. Simmons, obviously he won the Oscar for his role in this for Best Supporting Actor, and deservedly so. I mean, he just goes all out, he gives such a great performance in this, and he plays this, for people who haven't seen it, he plays this kind of teacher to Miles Teller for his character, like a jazz music conductor, teacher, instructor. And it's so layered the way he does it, because he's kind of abusive, but then you still, after the class is over, or sessions, or whatever you want to call it, it's almost like a father figure, and he just kind of switches between these different, kind of personalities. Not like, it's a totally different person, but just this multi-layered performance where he just kind of, is this person one minute and then just kind of switches his attitude, and you don't know what he's going to say next in this movie. He kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat with, what he's going to say next and how he's going to act around the other characters in this. So, J.K. Simmons, absolutely phenomenal in this. I've always been a fan of him. I know he's a good actor, and this just kind of reinforced that. But again, this just kind of follows, like, there have been some movies made about jazz music in recent years, and Damien Chazelle has had a couple of these, like we said, La La Land and Whiplash. But you have Soul that just came out. So are we going to see like a renaissance of movies about jazz in the near future here?
Uh, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if if we're going to see or if we have seen. With soul maybe being the culmination of. I mean, jazz music is good music, man, and I think that's what I appreciated. There's a scene in La La Land where Sebastian explains why he loves jazz, which you can tell is Chazelle talking about why he loves jazz. And it's he's talking about it's free form, it's improv, it's when they're on stage they're just playing away, and then one guy just feels it and he just takes it away and starts doing his thing, and then the other people on stage just go okay, and they just jump in. And jazz music is good music, man. It's just you feel jazz music, man. It's good. So, and that's with soul, man. It's another one where it's just like the music and soul, so good. I bought the soundtrack after I saw that movie, and it's just a good music, man. But I don't know. Did you watch the short at all? That the film. So okay, so I'm getting from your face. So how Whiplash came to be was they had written the feature length script for it, and then in order to get financing for it, they took a chunk of the script, which was the first scene in the movie where he is in J.K. Simmons' class, that first scene, and they made that into a short film. And Miles Teller wasn't in this one; it was a different actor, kid from Scott Pilgrim and Perks of Being a Wallflower, and J.K. Simmons was in it. And then they took this short film, 17 minutes, took it to Sundance. Sundance won the jury prize, got financing for the feature film. The rest is history. Chazelle goes on to become the youngest director to ever win best director. But I watched the short film after the movie, and it's good. It's good.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, obviously with the music for a movie like this, it's essentially about jazz music. You expect the music to be good, and it certainly is. There's like a couple of great pieces, and just if you appreciate music, you'll appreciate this movie. But I think something that maybe not a lot of people talk about when they watch this is the cinematography. I really appreciated that, and that was something that I noticed outright in this movie. And the way it's lit and the way it's shot and the way that different scenes and shots are composed and the way that they look and their color palette. I mean, the cinematography in this movie was top notch as well. And I couldn't help but appreciate that. And it stood out to me as I was watching it as well.
Yeah. Because it was all kind of darkly lit. Most of the movie takes place indoors, so it was a good, well lit. I think at the Oscars it won Best Editing, it won Best Sound Design or something like that, and then obviously Supporting Actor. So it was a hell of a way for Chazelle to make his entrance into the film world. And the guy went on to make La La Land and First Man, which is another great movie. So the guy's a great filmmaker.
So thank you everybody for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening on one of our different platforms that we put out, Life Imitating Movies, this weekly podcast where Mitch and Brad here talk about news stories from the past week, the lighter side of news mostly, and talk about the movies that kind of resemble them that have already been made. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back again with a new episode next week, Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So Brad, anything you want to say to wrap up here?
Nah, we're officially on iTunes. So if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe on iTunes, man, because it's a good platform to listen to.
Absolutely. iTunes is one of the bigger platforms for audio podcasts. So the link will be in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, or just search on iTunes, Life Imitating Movies. So, little pat on the back for us. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll be back again next week with a new episode.
Later.